Monti Ossenfort continues to tweak, prod, etc., to position the Cardinals for future success.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here, still messing with the virtual backgrounds. Leave in the comments if this is good. I mean, I just, I don't want it to look super weird. I think it looks fine here. Anyways, thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free and available wherever you get your podcast. And on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Leave a like on the video. Leave a comment. Growing this, for you, for us. And it's only getting better. We're 70%, 60%, 65% of the way through this long sludge of a season. But as I mentioned before the season started, this was going to be a future-paced podcast throughout this season. And we were, gifted competitive games through the first 8 weeks. Kyler Murray getting a win in his first game back against Atlanta, and a bunch of little storylines centralized around young players and how they're positioning themselves to be integral parts of the Arizona Cardinals roster for the future, like I had discussed. That's what we were hoping for when the offseason started. And now we're in this final chapter that I coined on Wednesday of determining if Kyler Murray is the quarterback for the future, if that's still up for debate. So I'm going to discuss Monti Ossenfort releasing and Zach Ertz being released, and I'll qualify it, I promise. Kyler Murray potentially could go into Sunday with the majority of his offensive firepower not playing. And then I'll do Pass to Victory, as I do as the last segment of every week. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Zach Ertz was released earlier this week, and I did my crossover Thursday with Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers yesterday. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out on YouTube and, wherever you get your podcast. He was released yesterday, obviously, before I recorded that podcast before it happened. And first, not really a surprise. Zach Ertz has been fine. They traded, nothing for him. He was a part of that push. The offense just kind of sputtered whenever James Conner would get hurt, and DeAndre Hopkins was out. Last year was a mess, and this year, and he got hurt last year, and then he very briefly flashed early on when Joshua Dobbs could only throw to tight ends. But this was time. He wants to go play for a contender. Cool. So my qualifier here is, I know that Zach Ertz wanted out. And I know that this wasn't like Monti Ossenfort and Michael Bidwill being Robin Hood and be like, you know what? Go get yours. I know that wasn't this. This isn't directly correlated to like Isaiah Simmons getting traded, them not bringing anybody in during the offseason, guys that they just let go because they weren't part of the future plans. It's not that, and it's also in the arena of that. A couple little wrinkles here. One, they gave him a paycheck for this weekend. Didn't have to. I'm sure it's commonplace around the league, but the Arizona Cardinals need to do everything they can, whether it seems infinitesimal to many. They need to do everything they can to show other free agents, future draft players, everything, coaches, that this is not the old Arizona Cardinals. And while, again, this seems a very minute detail in the grand scheme of what Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon need to do, it wasn't a step back, so it was a step forward. And yes, I believe if they would have cut him post June 1 next year, they would have had $10 million free cap space instead of $7.5 million. I think it was something like that. It's pennies. Go let him be a contender this year, whatever. Zach Ertz has been fine. He was great. I ingratiated him into the honorable mention of being a quote-unquote Arizona Cardinal when those were so few and far between to come by because the draft have been terrible over the last decade, and free agents don't really come here unless it's by trade. Probably go to Philly or, Baltimore or, wherever. And he's pretty healthy now, so just let him go play. I get it. And this is going to – it's going to be like, oh, yeah. It's going to be like an immaculate grid killer one 5 years from now. Eagles and Cardinals. And, like Hassan Reddick's too many percentage points and others. And that's like, oh, you know what? Zach Ertz, that's right, 12%. Nailed it. So, great. Thank you for, the time you spent here and move on. He wasn't going to be a part of the future. So Monti Ossenfort said, why wait? And I think that it's just a tipping point to kind of bring this all back in to everything that's happened since the end of last season. The Cardinals have like 40% of the players on their roster now that ended the season on their roster last year. 40% of their starting 53 to end last season. That's quick work in less than a full calendar year. So you think of it like, okay, so traded Isaiah Simmons, never really amounted to much. Didn't really bring in during free agency. Draft has been fine. Zach Ertz. What's next? Hollywood Brown? Kyler Murray? Rondale Moore? Like, the little scary part about this is you got a new CEO in town, and he's just cleaning house. And this wasn't like it was a functional organization. He's like, nope, you're not my people. See ya. I didn't draft you. I didn't hire you. See ya. It's not that. And it's also not that right now. But it's easy to say in this given situation because you're not broaching the topic of Kyler Murray or Hollywood Brown, who's, probably still the highest profile guy that Steve Keim brought in over the last 2 years, whether it was the right move or not. And also, compounding that, it seems like they're going to be a package deal. I could not see a world where it wouldn't be. So what Monti Ossenfort's done since taking over is methodically and with purpose and direction removing people from this organization that he doesn't see being a part of the future. There's unwavering methodology behind this. And it's refreshing. And it's not just because it's not Steve Keim. That's a very clear distinction that needs to be made here. Monti Ossenfort knocked that draft out of the park, by all accounts, with future pacing and all that stuff. There doesn't seem to be a true bust of the lot. We'll see what happens with John Gaines when he comes back. Hopefully, he's ready for, training camp in 2024. He was kind of a standout in rookie minicamp early on. He was looked to be potentially the starting center week 1 before getting hurt. Clayton Tune, whatever. And Dante Stills has been the best interior defensive lineman for the Cardinals, 6th-round pick. Pretty good. So with this Zach Ertz, farewell, it's just a nice, ribbon on the present that Monti Ossenfort has given the future of this organization. They've positioned themselves for the opportunity to be great. I haven't discussed this in a while, so everydayers, you've heard this. If this is the first time listening, thank you. I truly appreciate it. Why don't you make Monday your second listen? The Arizona Cardinals have had the restrictor plate on their organization with Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury there. While it looked okay now, there was zero contingency plan for the future. The foundation was eroding. It was put together by Band-Aids and crazy glue. And what Monti Ossenfort has done is lay new cement, new bedrock in an effort to position this team for future success. All you can do is put your organization in the best position with the most opportunity to succeed, whether it be signing free agents, retaining current players, or drafting well. And that's what Monti Ossenfort has done and continues to do. It's not a finished product. It never is a finished product. But what he did was Etch-a-Sketch everything that Steve Keim did. By, more or less. And we don't know if it's over yet. But this Zach Ertz one is just one final, like, this is a new regime. This is going to be built the right way. And stick around. It could get really fun really soon. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Everybody could be out on offense on Sunday in the wide receiver room. What is Kyler Murray going to do? What are the coaches going to do in an effort to gauge Kyler Murray and his future with this team? Let's discuss next as we roll on here. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel. You know we love it because how can you not? So, it's America's number one sportsbook, man. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Dak Prescott, before Thursday Night Football, was at plus 600 to win the NFL MVP. We'll see what happens after this week to see if that bumps up. You can get all that more over at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to go leave a review wherever you get your podcast. I've had some pissed off fan bases at me over the years that have kind of jettisoned the ratings. It's cool. I'd rather, just have you here. But if you want to do both, I won't stop you. Hollywood Brown, Michael Wilson didn't practice the last 2 days. And as I'm recording this podcast, the actual injury report, this is a fluid situation, but this could be problematic for Kyler Murray on Sunday. Elijah Wilkerson is designated to return. He was, brought off the IR. Left guard, didn't play well as a starter early in the season. We'll see if he plays. He's been practicing in limited fashion the last couple days. Trey McBride is playing in a limited fashion. He didn't practice on Wednesday. That was kind of the trifecta. Hollywood Brown, Michael Wilson, and Trey McBride, none of whom practiced on Wednesday. So let's put it this way, because we don't know who's going to play Sunday yet, because obviously this is 48 hours before the game. Let's position it this way. Say Michael Wilson and Hollywood Brown don't play. How are Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon truly going to gauge this from a Kyler Murray-centric lens? Is it how he positions the team for potential success, whether it be, first down scores, whatever, and not really be married to the result? Is it if he doesn't turn the ball over? Is it if he, he has more zip on his deep ball? Is it if he can be elusive with his legs? Like, what are the metrics that Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort are using in an effort to determine if Kyler Murray is the quarterback for the future? That's if they already don't know. And I'll tell you what, there's no, especially with how Monti, there's a lot of adjectives you can use for Monti Ossenfort. Jonathan Gannon loves Kyler Murray. I think that's pretty obvious. But, it's a two-headed monster here with Bidwill or with Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon. You notice how I don't mention Michael Bidwill's name as much? He shouldn't be making these decisions. We've tried that. We've tried watching that, and that ain't working. So Monti Ossenfort seems like too pragmatic and too smart of a guy to just say, nope, that's enough. You're our guy. Because if he was, there's really no reason to play him. So that's why I'm thwarted by this. What are the metrics? What are the metrics that they're looking at to see if Kyler Murray's the guy? Do they already know that he's not? I feel like that's the least possible scenario. And you know what? Maybe that's not fair. I I pride myself in not editing these videos with what I say. If I disagree with something that I just said, or if I want to reframe what I just said, I think it's better for you to hear me as a human being, and just so like, even if they do know he's the guy, he probably should still be playing. Yeah, and getting reps, I immediately disagree with myself, which I'm allowed to do. So, and let's put it this way. Let's say it's not as dire. Okay, so say Trey McBride plays and Hollywood Brown plays. It could be, veteran days off. I don't think it is, but the Cardinals also haven't had a bye and it's week 13. So maybe everybody's just exhausted. If it's just Hollywood Brown, that's where, like, if it's Michael Wilson and Hollywood Brown out, Kyler Murray has a built-in excuse for production. And not necessarily saying he's going to need it, but that defense is really good. And that run game for Pittsburgh is it's starting to turn that corner to becoming really good. But if Hollywood Brown plays, this is kind of the best case scenario. I don't know if it's going to be Patrick Peterson on the other side defending him. Probably not. Probably going to be a younger guy. But what you're going to need to see from Kyler Murray and Hollywood Brown is production before the fourth quarter when the game is out of reach. It's going to be cold. It's going to be Pittsburgh. It's going to be Pittsburgh in December on the road in the morning slate. So the metric to gauge Kyler Murray's production will be a lot more clear if Hollywood Brown does play, and you hope he does. And this isn't like, it's make or break if this, or, it's a great transition if that. It's not going to be sewn up just because Hollywood Brown and Kyler Murray have a good day. And this is what you need to see, in my opinion, from this tandem, from this duo, if Hollywood Brown's fully healthy and he plays on Sunday. More than just crossing routes, more than just wide receiver screens, which are like free receptions. I want to see Hollywood Brown burn a DB. I want to see him run a beautiful post route with a timing ball from Kyler Murray for a chunk gain down the field. That's what we saw during the first 6 weeks of last year. It was incredible. It was, and I'm just using this because this is topical now. It was like Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb then. Not to the degree and numbers, but that was the volume that Hollywood Brown was getting from Kyler Murray. And the fact that I think he had 6 receptions for 86 yards or 8 receptions, it doesn't matter. It needs to be impactful plays early on to keep the Cardinals in game scoring points early instead of this garbage time stuff that's going to look good in the box score, but has no real determining factor on the outcome of the game. So if Hollywood Brown does play, there's going to be more pressure on Kyler Murray to produce. But more so, there's going to be so much more pressure on Hollywood Brown to produce. Because if we see for the rest of the year what we've seen, he ain't going to be an Arizona Cardinal next year. And I don't know if he should, even after what we've seen. When you have to pay somebody the amount of money that a second-tier wide receiver is going to garner now, Christian Kirk got all of King Midas's gold. And I know it was Jacksonville, and I know they had a bunch of money to spend. But it's going to be close to that. So is he the guy for the future? We're going to find out on Sunday. And I feel like the metrics, that's going to be fascinating. That's one thing, like the theory behind what's going on between Monti Ossenfort's ears from now through the end of week 18. What's it going to be? What are they looking for? If they still need to be looking for anything. It's going to be fun. Alex Lanty, Locked On Cardinals. What's the path to victory for the Cardinals? Let's actually talk about the game. It's hard. It's hard to talk about a game when the Cardinals are 2-10. Well, if they tweak this and they can, not be eliminated from the playoffs. But this is the last segment, Path to Victory. I do it every week. I'll continue to do it every week through week 18. Let's discuss it next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. Game Time app makes buying tickets wildly simple. You download the app. You search all the events that you want, basketball, football, stand-up comedy, hockey, theater, whatever it is, you can get tickets up to an hour before the show, and then also sometimes even an hour after the show. The coolest part, I talk about this every live read that I do for Game Time app. When you click on the tickets that you potentially want to buy, you will see a panoramic viewpoint, first person, of what it will look like if you were to sit in those seats. It's an absolute game changer. It takes all the, guessing about what your vantage point is going to be if you buy specific tickets. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price. Guaranteed. So, path to victory. What do the Arizona Cardinals need to do in an effort to keep this game close in Pittsburgh on Sunday? Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Please go to the YouTube channel. Search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit the subscribe button. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on the aforementioned YouTube. This is more fun to talk about this specific sliver of this segment because Kyler Murray's back, so winning the turnover battle doesn't have the addendum of and don't turn the ball over. The Cardinals have had trouble all year converting turnovers into points. In turn, they've been turning the ball over a lot more over the last month, 6 weeks, which isn't a recipe for success. On the other side, Kenny Pickett, as Chris Carter told me from Locked On Steelers yesterday, he's been wildly efficient as of late. He had his, massive day last week. But Kenny Pickett's not a world beater. So he can be had. And how is that going to happen? They're going to have to get after the quarterback. I don't know what Nick Rallis is going to have to do without Kazir White there. It's almost like a jailbreak blitz situation. It's like, how many cover zeros can they run? Because with that, and this is kind of the biggest path to victory here, is you've got to let Kenny Pickett, you've got to make Kenny Pickett beat you. And I'm using a lot of buzzwords here. I'm using some cliches like, this is my thesis statement for Sunday if the Cardinals want to win. Stop the run, make Kenny Pickett throw the ball more than 22 times in an effort to win a game. Because if they run the ball 35 or 40 times between Najee Harris and the other RB there, I don't know. Why can't I? What am I talking about here? But Jalen Warren, wow. Between those two guys, if they run the ball 35 or 40 times for 200 yards, this is going to be a laugher. Because what that's going to do is it's going to eat clock, long drives. Defense is going to get tired. And then you're going to have TJ Watt and Cam Hayward on the other side, Minka Fitzpatrick, just coming after Kyler Murray. So that is the Owen Wilson, Armageddon, scariest environment imaginable. If they just run the ball up the middle. Because that's, the Cardinals' weak spot is in the middle of the defensive line, among other things. Their second level hasn't been this week since the start of the season with Kazir White out. Zaven Collins, although ranked highly over the last couple of weeks, Pro Football Focus, has been a ghost the entire year after, the first couple of weeks where he had a couple turnovers. They need to turn Pittsburgh over and stop the run. There you go. TLDR, for those who didn't know that, too long didn't read. They need to win the turnover battle and stop the run. Because they're fighting with Broderick Jones there from Georgia, who's playing right tackle. It's kind of unlocked Najee Harris. Jalen Warren has kind of been the scat back kind of, but more of like when Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler were with the Chargers, how Austin Eckler was a scat back, but he also, he could run the ball between the tackles also. And that's kind of who Jalen Warren is. So it's not like a Chris Thompson situation where he's coming in just on third down, or if they're down 10 points with 7 minutes left and using him out of the pass game. He can do both. They will have fresh legs all game. And if the Cardinals do not stop one or both of them, it is going to be a very long day where the Cardinals offense won't be on the field that much. This is going to be a very, very important litmus test for the Arizona Cardinals organization. Because if this turns into a Cleveland Browns game 2.0, I know it was Clayton Tune and not Kyler Murray, but if it turns into something like that where they lose 27-10 and it's a laugher, very serious conversations will be being had on the bye week, because it's the worst time after you lose embarrassingly and you've got to soak in that for an extra week when the bye coming up around the corner. It wouldn't expedite things, but it doesn't help things that people in positions of power have an extra 7 days to stew in what was witnessed in Pittsburgh on Sunday. I'm not saying it's going to happen. This is probably going to be an ugly game, which is fine. The Cardinals have won ugly this year. They ain't winning pretty, but they've played. They've been competitive in pretty much every game this year, save a couple. And that's pretty damn good for the roster that they have. So we'll see on Sunday. It's going to tell a lot about the mettle of this team. I think they'll show up. I think they're going to play hard. It's going to be tough to get a victory in Pittsburgh on Sunday, but we will see. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. I will talk to you on Monday.